And on what shapes as another historic night, the futures of two clubs, Hawthorn and Melbourne, will be decided as the members meet to vote on the proposed merger. Rob Gaylard and Andrew Marr will be bringing us up to date from both meetings. And Lee Matthews, you endorsed the merger. Getting cold feet?
A little bit, yeah. I think it's a bit like turning off the life support system. I mean, you might think the facts make it necessary, but it's not something you want to do. And I'm almost hoping the vote goes against the merger tonight. Don't know what will happen from tomorrow morning onwards, but you know, once it gets to the day, it's a really tough situation when you think you're voting to end the sort of brown and gold Guernsey.
And Rohan, just talk the merger briefly. We'll go to Rob Gaylard shortly. He's at Dallas Brooks Hall, but what's your betting on the outcome of the two votes?
Well, probably 50-50 again. I must say I'm very worried about these mysterious proxy votes. I mean, you know, some of the things we've heard in the last couple of days, things about directors signing up employees as members of the club to vote yes, that worries me greatly. And I think if both meetings tonight are solidly anti-merger and yet the thing still gets over the line by virtue of the proxy votes, it's almost the worst symbolic feel that Melbourne Hawks could have, and it couldn't get off to a worse start. So I really hope whatever happens, that doesn't happen.
Wonder what sort of mood there'll be at the two venues, Camberwell Civic Centre as well as Dallas Brooks.
Aggressive.
You think so?
I think there's, I mean, we were listening just before we came on air to some of the feed from the venue, and there was the anti-merger chanting starting already. So there's some very passionate. I'm very happy Footy Feedback's on tonight. I'm happy to be here, and couldn't go to the meeting. Had an excuse, and it was a very good one. Happy to use it, I was.
Well, we might head to the Dallas Brooks Hall. Rob Gaylard is reporting from there on the situation at Melbourne's historic night. So, Rob, good evening to you. What can you tell us a little before the meeting is due to start?
Thanks, Tim. Well, as you can see, out the front of the Dallas Brooks Hall at the moment, they anticipate about they're hoping for about 5,000 people here. And of course, this is Melbourne's end of the world. And at the moment, the Dallas Brooks Hall will only hold 2,000 people. But they're starting to gather. They're still here on the steps. Everywhere you walk here at the moment, the no merger sign has gone up. In fact, come for a little bit of a stroll with me just at the moment. And I think there's one gentleman just to the right of me here at the moment. If he doesn't run away from me, I get the feeling that he might be in the wrong camp. Now, shouldn't you be down at Camberwell?
I should, but I'm here to save the Melbourne Football Club.
The Melbourne Football Club and in Hawthorn scarves. Tell me why. Yeah, this is our camera over here. And we're live, so just make sure you say the right thing.
No, I'm here to save the Melbourne Football Club. They've been around for 138 years, and they've had their 12 flags, and they've got we've got nothing against Melbourne, but we're just here to save the club, you know.
Arthur, so you're not a Hawthorn supporter? Well, I gather it's
I am a Hawthorn supporter.
You are a Hawthorn supporter, but you're here to save the Melbourne club.
Yeah, I'm here to save the Melbourne Football Club.
You're confusing me a little bit here, because no's the merger. OK, and the signs everywhere around here at the moment. No is the merger. What sort of response are you getting from the Melbourne people coming through?
Fantastic. I've had about 95% all voting no tonight.
Here already?
Yes. 95% that I've spoken to tonight.
I get the feeling that perhaps the people that aren't dressed in Melbourne colours, OK, are the people that want to back this no merger vote.
You can tell them, yeah, you can tell by the way they dress.
What's happening at the other end of the world?
I haven't got a clue, basically, but I will be going down probably in about another hour or so.
All right, so as you can probably see, Tim, both sides represented here at the moment. I'm going to have a little chat with Brian Dixon just beforehand. I just heard inside that Ian Ridley has asked for the no merger, the Demon Alternative, to speak first, which is a little bit unusual. So the no vote will be the first to speak here at the Dallas Brooks Hall. I'll keep you in, I'll keep you in light. I'm starting to get a little bit vocal here at the moment. I'll keep you in light as the night progresses on. I'll be back to you in about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. Meanwhile, I dare say Andrew Marr's got plenty to talk about down there at Camberwell.
Thank you very much, Rob. It is amazing down here, I can tell you. The numbers are absolutely astronomical. There are about queues of about half a kilometre long out the front. I'm joined by Don Scott. Don, you must be feeling absolutely fantastic about this.
Not really. I mean, I'm not the confident person. I look at negatives and try and assess those. So a lot of these people have already put in their proxies, and I don't believe it's a true indication of what's really on.
Is the given the proxy numbers both at Melbourne and here, irrespective of how the vote goes here tonight, do you think it can possibly be a fair indication of the feeling of the Hawthorn people?
No, because I know what's happening with the proxies as far as Hawthorn is concerned. You know, and I know they've been out there soliciting. We've had people ringing in from companies now telling how they've been solicited. They're not even Hawthorn people, and they've put their names to it. They don't care about Hawthorn.
Do you have any understanding or idea as how you guys are going at the moment in terms of the numbers required to get your vote over the line?
Well, at the moment, the proxies are tied. There's about 2,700 each.
Well, given that fact, I mean, we've got about 2,500 to 3,000 people here tonight.
Don't worry about that. I'm not confident until we've got that over the line.
Not at all. So you can't look around here tonight and feel this amazing...
Oh, yeah, I mean, don't get carried away with it. I'm telling you, it's got to be a rational thing. Don't get carried away with emotion. It's got to be rational.
So what message do you hope to get across to these people here tonight who
I want to get a message. I want to get a message to one person. We're going across the studio.
We are, yep.
Hey, Barney, you there?
Scotty, can you hear me?
Hey, Barney.
Can you hear me? I can hear you.
I can hear you, Barney.
Okay.
What are you doing, mate?
I'm working on TV, thank goodness.
You what?
Oh, you mean which way did I vote?
I can't hear him.
No, I can't hear him either.
Yes or no, Barney?
I voted
I know how you voted, but listen, you can still get here 9 o'clock, Barney. I know you like that.
It's working.
Okay, and all it requires, Barney, is you to get in your car and get out here. The vote is open. Your proxy can be superseded. We've already got that. So, Barney, get out here, okay? I know you like that. And, in fact, I heard you this morning, and you're our way.
Can he put in a telephone vote, Don?
A telephone? I wish we could get rid of the bloody proxy.
Don, thanks for joining us, and Andrew Marr with him at the Camberwell Civic Centre. It's obviously a very intense occasion there, as it's going to be at the Dallas Brooks Hall. There's going to be a lot of emotion.
In all honesty, I felt a little sick all day because when it comes to this occasion, I sincerely don't believe Hawthorn will be alone in it, in existence in its existing entity beyond a few years' time. But I firmly believe that. But nevertheless, a half of me wants it to go on for another year or two.
It's interesting.
Eventually, I think we'll get back to this stage no matter what. And even if it's a no vote tonight, I do believe it's only the forerunner to what will come in the future.
But what you're saying is that you could go to another club and you could actually compete against your original club, Hawthorn, and want to kick the living daylights out of them on the field. But tonight really does make you feel uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's no winning out of tonight. It's a bit like if the anti-merger goes, the anti-merger vote wins, well, OK, at least the club is able to fight on. Certainly what Scotty's organised is given that sum of money, which means the club can go on into next year. I mean, before that 800 or 900,000 was raised, the club didn't have that option, and the club would have really had to close its doors come October, November. So the ground, the goalposts, as they say, have changed a little in the last month or 6 weeks.
I think at the very least, so Lee, I mean, even if you're pro-merger, you'd have to acknowledge that the Operation Payback movement has just sort of generated this incredible passion that a lot of us who don't barrack for Hawthorn didn't believe actually existed, and I've just got renewed respect for Hawthorn people out of this, and I think that's been sensational. And it would be such a pity for it to now be lost.
Reality will eventually prevail.
But will that be market forces, or will it be people continuing to push that situation?
Well, a bit of both. I mean, market forces, I know it's something of a contrived competition in a lot of ways, but I don't think the AFL are going to change their policy making to make it easier for the clubs who are struggling in the finances of the way football's going in the 90s and beyond to survive even or flourish.
Lee, just on that, if Hawthorn were allowed to continue for the next 3 or 4 years, what type of repercussions are they allowed to continue as they are, or do you think there'd be a massive split?
I think all that's guaranteed is that Hawthorn will continue into next year. Nothing's guaranteed beyond that.
It's interesting to note that in the last 5 encounters between Melbourne and Hawthorn on the MCG, the average crowd has been 56,000. I would think that administrations of football competitions around the world would be fighting to preserve two teams that when they played at a good venue regularly drew that sort of a crowd. I suppose it speaks volumes for the phenomenon that is the thriving Australian Football League. But those merger meetings in Camberwell and at the Dallas Brooks Hall are due to be underway by now. Let's go to Melbourne's meeting just outside the city at the Dallas Brooks Hall. Rob Gaylard is there, and I believe he might have with him the leader of the Melbourne anti-merger forces, Brian Dixon. Rob.
Thanks, Tim. Well, Brian Dixon's taken a moment or two out of the meeting here at the Dallas Brooks Hall just to come out and have a chat with us. Brian, you've got a lot of strong support here tonight, and just as we walked out of there, the accolades and the cheers were happening. It's probably your own floor show in there at the moment, but it's going to be a little bit tough for you by the look of things because you're first up.
Well, there's no doubt, Rob, that if you take what our response has been to our telephone polls, it's 2 for 1 against the merger. The numbers here are no doubt against the merger, and I believe that if we get any other vote other than an anti-merger vote, then it has to, the whole process has to be, the question of its validity has to be called into account.
Now, proxy votes closed at 8 o'clock last night. Have you guys got any idea perhaps what that vote might even be?
Well, we know what our proxy votes are, but we don't know what the opposition's proxy votes are. So I think that it might be that the proxy votes are even, Stephen, and I believe that the voting here tonight will swing the issue to no merger.
Been a little bit of mudslinging earlier today, Brian, and a little bit from your camp and a little bit from them. It's just starting to become a little bit of sort of them versus us, a stronger version, as I just forgetting the word I'm looking for at the moment, but it's Ian Ridley is now just starting to come out a little bit stronger in his thoughts against you guys. And earlier today we read whereby perhaps that these proxy votes, the setting up of proxy votes, is, well, Bill Guest's name's been mentioned, of sort of getting tickets together and 60 people.
It's quite improper of Bill Guest to have done what he's done, particularly when we met Ian Ridley and Bill Guest about 3 weeks ago, and we asked were there any block votes that had been bought, and Ian Ridley said he wouldn't have a bar of such conduct. He wouldn't want to win on that basis. And here we've got Bill Guest sitting there and not saying a word.
You arrived here tonight thinking that you're going to be second on the podium?
Well, our vote, our position ought to be that the no vote is unable to speak second, and that we ought to be on a level playing field. The Demon Alternative should be up on the podium along with the board, because this is supposed to be a referendum. This is the most important vote that's ever affected the Melbourne Football Club, and we're being treated like second-class citizens.
Well, we'll keep you informed of what's happening throughout the night, gentlemen. Back there, Brian Dixon, as I said, has taken a moment or two from the Dallas Brooks Hall to come out and have a chat with us. I no doubt you'll be going back to Camberwell and have a chat with Andrew Marr. I'll be back with you shortly.
Thanks for that, Rob Gaylard at the Dallas Brooks Hall. We'll be going back to the Dallas Brooks Hall. Rob Gaylard among the crowd on this big night.
It's well past the start time for the meeting here at Dallas Brooks Hall, and while there may be 2,500 or so people inside, you can probably see just behind me at the moment, they line right out here onto the street in front of the Dallas Brooks Hall, around the corner and then down to Albert Road. And I would envisage there's probably about 3,000 people out here as well too. I think what's happening here too, a lot of the proxy vote people too have just come along to have a listen to see what's being said here tonight. A few of the crowd getting a little bit testy, but I think they're just going to have to be a bit patient. And of course, our good friend Ron Barassi, and you can hear them starting to fire up behind me at the Melbourne at the moment with the cry of no merger. That's been the cry inside all night as well too. The PM edition of the Herald Sun sees Ron Barassi. A last-minute change. The headlines: merger shock. Barassi switches sides as the survey hits AFL. Barassi's had a chance to have a look at the figures, I think, and does believe that the Demon Alternatives options should be listened to. So we're in for an interesting night. You can take it back in the studio. It's probably just a little bit quieter, and we'll keep you updated with what's happening here.
Thanks for that, Rob Gaylard, where I'm told the meeting is now officially starting half an hour late, and some of those who can't get in are claiming that the meeting should be called off. Barassa's about-face would have to be one of the more amazing things, because he has been such an unashamed pro-national leaguer, but we'll hear more about that, no doubt, in the ensuing hours. Back to Carlton.
It's nothing to do with the National League, Tim. I mean, Brass is pro-national.
Well, he's a football rationalist, though,
well, yes, he's a football rationalist. Yeah, I spoke to Brass yesterday, and I think his feeling was that quite possibly this merger will be unsuccessful, but he's really had a kind of backflip if all of a sudden in 24 hours he's actually supporting and would personally vote anti-merger.
I mean, the point I was making is he has seen mergers, a reduction of the number of teams in Melbourne, as being absolutely essential to the rationalisation of the National League.
Yeah, that's the point. I suppose as being pedantic about the National League, he certainly, and well, I think I'm a...
He's not xenophobic. Let's put it that way.
I don't know what he is.
Now we can go back to the Carlton, the Camberwell Civic Centre. Andrew Marr is at the Hawthorn merger meeting. Andrew.
Tim, yeah, look, it's the crowd here has become positively hostile and angry. A few of my learned colleagues to my left have told me the meeting's now half an hour away from half an hour late, and I wouldn't be surprised if Rohan Coleman and his colleagues are in there refusing to come out. The atmosphere here is absolutely hostile. You can hear it in the background. It's quite amazing. There are probably about 3,000, 3,500 people in the building at the moment, and about 2,000 people outside. So quite amazing scenes here at the Camberwell Civic Centre. Camberwell's not used to this sort of behaviour.
Do you think the meeting will get underway, Andrew?
I'm not sure, Tim. It has to get underway at some stage. There'll be a riot if it doesn't, but I'm not 100% sure. I thought there would have been somebody come out and let us know what's going on by now. We've had nobody come out from behind the closed door and give us any indication as to what's happening. So anybody's guess at this stage.
And Andrew, how many people are outside? I mean, have they fitted? Is that the word? Most of the people inside the Camberwell Civic Centre, or is there many outside?
It's amazing, Lee. The expected, the number of people you're supposed to be able to get in here is between 1,600 and 2,000. And I'm being told now that there's like 3,000 people in here at the moment. When I did come in here about an hour ago, there would have been the same number outside as there were inside. So I'm sure maybe 1,000 of those are in, but there's got to be 1,500 or 2,000 still out who have got no hope at all of getting in. So maybe they're taking that into account. Maybe they think that they can't quite get everybody voting tonight. And if that's the case, then who knows how they're going to resolve it.
Can you find many people there who are obviously pro-merger, and if so, are they wearing suits and ties, or how do you tell?
Rohan, there's a couple of suits and ties here, but I must admit there's a few anti-mergers wearing suits and ties here. There have been chants going up all night, all anti-merger, and you look around and you have a look at the people who are sitting there not participating. They're doing so with their heads in their hands, looking quite sheepish. It's one of those nights where I think people who maybe were pro-merger before they got here tonight, if they are still here, are beginning to think that maybe they should have just stuck with the side and the club a little bit longer and given it that year, one more year at least, to prove whether or not it could survive on its own.
Andrew, thanks for that. We might hear from you again before our program is out in just over half an hour's time, but still this business of affecting mergers is proving, I think, far more difficult than anyone in the administration of the game ever quite imagined.
Well, they keep underestimating the power of emotion in footy, and you can call it a cliche and you can call it outdated or whatever you want, but it just keeps getting up, doesn't it? Footscray Fitzroy in '89 kept Fitzroy going for 10 years, and it looks like it's going to bring this undone as well. I mean, they underestimate it at their own peril.
Well, in fact, it's the irrational, inexplicable emotion which makes the game what it is. That's why people go along and barrack for their teams. You can't explain it. It's irrational.
Be quiet. Now be quiet. These gentlemen here deserve a little bit more respect than what you are giving them. Now, this is not Hawthorn-like. Now please, 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 can we commence orderly? Can we commence a meeting in orderly fashion, please? Just a little bit of decorum. We all know we're all upset too, just as much as you. We're bleeding. Now, can we just keep it? Excuse me, I am talking, and I've always been told not to talk over somebody while they're talking. So, just button. Thank you.
They were live pictures. That is the scene at the Camberwell Civic Centre. The Hawthorn meeting is just getting underway. These were the pictures when the board arrived on the stage, and you'll hear under me the crowd, the anger, the hostility, leaving no doubt about their feelings. And tonight Hawthorn is a club divided, a club that we're told doesn't have the wherewithal to stay on its own feet, and yet obviously a tremendous intensity and power of feeling from a lot of people that it should stand on its own. This is a very difficult and very painful process. That was just a few minutes ago when Brian Coleman and his board, I can see the finance director Graham not there, and Yabby Jeans, of course, an icon at Hawthorn, multiple premiership coach, and he was among the group being booed on the stage. It wouldn't make you feel terribly good, Lee.
Oh, it's shocking. I mean, it's really been very hard for these board members. I mean, everyone in this has got pure motives. I mean, the board are doing what they think is in the best interest of the club. I don't think they're so much pro-merger. They just come to the belief there is no other choice. Now, you know, I'm sure if there was another choice, they'd be only too happy for Hawthorn to continue in its own right. So it has become personal. Unfortunately, when the supporters get up and boo people because they've got a different opinion to themselves, I mean, people have to be prepared to listen to other people's opinion. Finally, the members will be able to vote and the majority will rule.
Lee, could the hostility be also that the club finds itself in the position it's in because of the...
Oh, I agree. I think you're right, Dux. Yeah, no doubt about that. I think all of a sudden the Hawthorn club has sort of done well on the field in the last sort of 20 years, and probably the financial strife's only come up in the last couple. So I think supporters have trouble really comprehending their financial situation.
It asks a question too. I mean, if they had alerted people to how bad the situation was instead of trying to pull the wool over their eyes, which they clearly had done, the Scott group perhaps could have rallied and got together the wherewithal to so they never need to negotiate a merger. Maybe one of the benefits of this will be that it will change the way clubs are run, and they'll be more outgoing to their membership and their supporters.
We are going to return to the Camberwell Civic Centre live in just a moment, but at least we're smiling. There aren't too many smiles at the Camberwell Civic Centre. This is Raymond Vida proposing the resolution on behalf of the merger. And now Richard Loveridge, who is the master of ceremonies, if you can call him that, premiership player for Hawthorn, and he's copped his share of heckling too.
I now call on Graham Knott to second the proposed resolution.
I second the proposal to be put to the meeting.
I now call for the first speaker to speak in favour of the motion, Mr. Brian Coleman.
I'd like to say, before I start, how hurt I am as president of this football club. Hear me out. Hear me out, please. But as president, I was supposed to chair this meeting tonight. But 3 past presidents, or 4 I don't know, had it in their mind that they didn't want me to. Well, my respect for those gentlemen has gone down the drain. I've been a member of this footy club for 30 years. It's my team too. There are people in this room that are jeering at the moment that have never seen Hawthorn through the hard times. There are kids here who have been spoilt. If you do not shut up, Richard.
Can we please just hear out the speakers and save the jeering for the end?
I would expect all Hawthorn supporters here tonight to understand that with only 9,500 adult members and playing at Waverley, where our gate receipts and corporate sponsorship is going down, with the salary cap increasing each year, where it was a manageable 300,000 3 years ago, it'll be 1.5 next year. That hole is getting too big. Too big. Next year we won't be able to pay our players the same increase. And that is heading down the same path as Fitzroy. I know this is hard to take, but if you take Essendon, before we start, Essendon Footy Club are 1.6 million in front of Hawthorn. Interstate clubs are 2 to 3 million in front of Hawthorn. And that's only on gate receipts and membership. The AFL national competition is a new ball game now. There's 5 interstate finals. 5 interstate finals,
There's 3 interstate clubs with the best under-23 sides in the competition. How can we compete with them? Without Dunstall, without Langford, without Collins, you've got to have rocks in your head. I'll tell you how we compete with them. We merge with Melbourne. We become a unity that'll give us strength on and off the field. We'll be able to match every chequebook there is. If they come hunting for Crawford, if they come hunting for Harford, Holland, Graham or Chick or Rawlings, we'll be able to match their chequebook and we'll be a strong unity. And I tell you what, we'll be a strong club immediately. We won't have to wait years and years. I asked you, would you sooner play at Waverley or the MCG? Tell you what, we'll have 10 home games at Waverley, which means we'd have 13 games each year for the next 3 years, guaranteed. Everything will remain at Glenferrie. Everything's at Glenferrie. We've got guaranteed sponsorship of 1.5. The income from our social clubs will be 1.5. Corporate sponsors at the MCG will be out of your mind. We will be a strong, powerful club. So I ask you, please, vote with your head and not your hearts, please.
Well, that's the scene at the Camberwell Civic Centre. It's a bit hard to know what to say, but very sadly to see a person who obviously, as Brian Coleman said, has been there through the good and the bad times.
Yes.
And I mean, it was sad to watch that. It was almost painful.
Sometimes you wonder what tonight's meeting is about. I mean, obviously there's got to be a vote, that's fine, but I don't think there's anything going to be said at the meeting tonight that hasn't been covered ad nauseum over the last month or so. So, in a way, it's just a forum for a lot of emotional people to get there in very big numbers.
Now, we can go straight back. Ian Dicker, who I'm told could become the chairman of the Hawthorn Football Club if the merger doesn't go through. He's heading up the opposition in the business sense, and he's about to speak to obviously what will be a supportive crowd. So let's go back.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd first of all like to oppose the motion to merge. And secondly, Brian, I would like to correct something that you said. It was not the past presidents who suggested that you not be the chairman. It was said there would be a motion from the floor. You are incorrect in judging them that way. I would also like to, before I get into the main part, in response to what you said, Brian, say that it is just unreasonable to say that we could not pay the players next year. That is just not right. We will pay the players to the full extent of the salary cap and whatever the AFL is allowing us to pay over. And for any suggestion that we would not pay the players next year is just not right. As a businessman, I needed some inspiration to get off my backside and come and vote against the merger. And I had two sources of inspiration. The first was my father-in-law, Harry Pill, who was my great teacher, my great father-in-law, and I know his strength has been a great asset to me in the last 3 weeks. The second person some of you will know, his name is Robert Risson. And in the 50s and the 60s, Melbourne was going to lose its trams. There was a big move to get buses. What it's got to do with football is that Robert Risson single-handedly started to fight to keep the trams. And the fella who's keeping Hawthorn is Robert Risson, and that's Don Scott. Now as a businessman, despite the difficult times the board have had in the last couple of years, when I left Raymond Vida's office 2.5 weeks ago, the words that we had $1.4 million net assets as our base for the club assured me that we had the basic financial strength to continue to build from here. When you compare that with the now defunct Fitzroy at minus 2.2 million, Sydney with minus 1 million, St Kilda with minus 0.6 of a million, the Bears with minus 0.4, Richmond with 200,000, Footscray with 300,000, Melbourne with 700,000, you will see that with a base of $1.4 million of net assets, we've got a good foundation for the future.
Well, Ian Dicker speaking to the assembled multitude at the Camberwell Civic Centre at the moment. He incidentally led up the original Melbourne bid for the 1996 Olympic Games, the bid that ultimately was unsuccessful in Tokyo in 1990, and he was the chief executive of that operation for 5 months before standing down. He is a director of a number of companies, formerly managing director of the large company which has grown larger in recent years for some of the wrong reasons, and I speak of Ansell. Now we're going back to Melbourne in just a moment, to the Dallas Brooks Hall, where on the scene is Rob Gaylard. The meeting, we were told, was originally delayed for half an hour and then for another half hour. And in fact we can go to Ian Ridley, who is on the stage at the Dallas Brooks Hall, the chairman of the Melbourne Football Club. Well, Ian Ridley's on the stage at the Dallas Brooks Hall, but obviously things are hastening rather slowly there. We'll go back to Hawthorn shortly at the Camberwell Civic Centre, but What a tough night it is. I mean, it must have been painful enough for the likes of Ian Ridley and Brian Dixon. They played alongside each other in 4 premierships, and yet they've been tangling publicly over this in no uncertain terms, but tonight it gets really serious and dirty.
I think these guys will be starting to appreciate how Nick Coleman probably felt back in 1989 when he was the Footscray president who recommended the Fitzroy Bulldogs. I mean, you're just on a no-win situation. Even if the thing gets up now, I mean, these images are going to linger a long time, and all those blokes' careers will be not darkened, but they will have this hanging over them, I suppose.
Someone said it was a soft option, and I think they always knew it was a hard option. I mean, the boards took the view that they had to, in their belief on the facts they knew, but I don't think it was ever a soft option. I don't think they may have envisaged this kind of night, but I think they always knew it was going to be tough.
You know what amazes me about it? If Melbourne are up front about everything, I mean, the $3 million in assets, the backing of Gutnick and certainly associates of Gutnick, I mean, they're never going to let anything fall away. Why would Melbourne be looking at a merger when you consider they'd be in a better position than 5 or 6 other clubs?
Good question, Dukes.
They might be asking themselves that question tonight as they look from the stage out onto the floor of the Dallas Brooks Hall. We're going back to the Hawthorn meeting in Camberwell. A pro-merger speaker on the stage. Lee, can you tell us who that is?
George Lawson, who has been president of the social club and one of the very senior management at the Bank of Melbourne.
Drive enough cash to play the players. You will see from the top line of that overhead is the league dividend. The bottom line is what we have to pay the players right through to the year 2000. There's a big deficiency. There's a 2.6 million deficiency. Membership. Now just listen to this, please. Adult membership has been falling backwards. I'm here tonight to tell you fact. The average income per member for this football club is $60 per year. Because there are children members as well, darling. By the year 2000, if that membership cannot increase, those numbers cannot increase, expect as a member to have to pay $300 by the year 2000. Now, Don has said that there are 21,000 members, waiting members out there. He puts in his business plan that we're going to increase income through membership by 400,000. Don, you're going to have to get 6,660 new members, and that's an increase of 54%. A club struggling on the field will not encourage membership. Sponsorship. Can I talk about sponsorship just for a moment? We're talking about this club's sponsorship in 92, 700, 94, 800,000, in 96, 725,000. It's an extremely difficult exercise raising sponsorship money. Get off your ass and do something, darling. Get off your ass and do something. Now, Don tells us that he'll get 1.375 million in 1997. Let me tell you that the major sponsor of this club at the moment, that sponsorship of 620,000 is at risk. That overhead tells you where the difference between the salary cap and the league dividend, where it's going. Let's look at the merged club. net assets of 10 million, no debt, net profit of 1.4 million, 3 million in cash, financially viable, able to compete, MCG, Linda Crescent.
Well, pictures such as the financial statement falling off the whiteboard, a little impromptu, but such is the nature of live television, and they are dramatic pictures indeed. We're going back to Melbourne shortly, and I don't think there'll be any less dramatic there. Now, it looks like another anti-merger speaker is getting up because the mood of hostility has turned to one of support. Ron Cook, former president, is on the stage.
Thank you. I've only got 5 minutes, and I want to talk about this great club. You come up here if you want to talk. We've got a bit of quiet. Ladies and gentlemen, obviously it's a hard decision for me to come up here tonight and have to try and talk about saving a great club. It's when you've been a lad around the place and been brought up by some wonderful people that have worked their butt off to make this a fine sporting body. I get very, very offended when people that weren't around when some decisions and tough decisions were made by fine people. I've always considered myself a product of the Hawthorn Football Club and been very proud of it. But I do take offence, and I mean offence, when it's made out that years ago, well, that was too long ago, you wouldn't know. Now, what I want to tell you what happened about this club, there are some of them in heaven today, looking down, the Max Elmers, the Arthur Dunnings, the Bluey Kitsons, fellas, Bobby Yarman, a lot of people that have done a lot who would have a fit if they saw what was happening. People talking about the social club. Let me tell you about the social club. None of these people were here when this happened. In 1961, we won our first premiership. We didn't have any money. Hold on. We decided as a board or a committee, and it was in those days under the chairmanship of Sandy Ferguson, that we should bid for the house across the road for £7,000. We went and bid £7,050, which we didn't have, and bought the property. The board was so tough in those days in making sure that we didn't lose money. There was quite a division in the committee as spending £50 more and it could bankrupt us. But the great thing about the Hawthorn people in those days, whatever our blues were inside, when we shut the door and walked outside, they were 100% the judgment. I sat on the board as a 22-year-old. I'm getting aged now. I'm the younger of the two blokes that I respect greatly, and Sandy Ferguson and Phil Ryan, who followed Sandy. And the two great things that I've tried to do in my life as best I can, that I learnt from these fine people, were that you always honoured a promise, and I don't know of one promise in my 30-odd years at the club that was never honoured, even though it may have been a bad decision. It was a great way to do the right thing in life. But above all, and I mean above all, the one thing that we never did was spend what we didn't have. I haven't got long. 7 weeks ago tonight, when we were invited by the board to be told, amongst about another 30 people, that the board had decided to investigate merging with Melbourne. On that night, we were advised that the club had not shown losses of $1.5 million between 1990 and 93 in our accounts, and they're still not shown. That's the problem. It was cheating the books. I must congratulate Don Scott. We never spoke for 15 years, Scotty. You've done the best job I've ever seen a man do around our club. Ian Dicker, if it's the wish of this board that if they get beaten tonight, that they will resign. Your new president will be in Dicker. I believe that we have got problems to say we're going to have to work our butt off. In 1966, I'll leave you with this, we finished on the bottom, we finished on the bottom of the ladder in 1995. The draw came out and it was Collingwood at Collingwood, a nice easy one first up, who were runners-up to St Kilda in the previous year's grand final. We put 6 first-year players in the side that day, got beat by a few goals. Don Scott played his first games in the seconds with Terry Gay, and the Collingwood Football Club sold more tickets and made more money outside the ground than we did for the whole season. That's if you're talking about what things have changed. We still won 8 premierships since then. Thank you.
Well, that's former President Ron Cook speaking against the merger as far as Hawthorn is concerned at the Camberwell Civic Centre. We're about to go back to the Dallas Brooks Hall, where there also has been pandemonium. Joseph Gutnick apparently left the meeting, but this is him returning now.
We have to discuss that with the Melbourne Football Club board.
What's happened here? You're told them some time back this meeting place was far too small.
We did.
Whatever's happening now is probably in your favour, the way things are happening.
Well, it's chaos, and it's been chaos organised by the Melbourne Football Club board. Well, of course, it's their meeting. They've organised it.
I've had to apologise to people like Oakley. I've been barred from meetings at the AFL Commission by Collins last year, and I can produce the facts. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. I can produce facts. Last year, I tried to get the Victorian Football Council off the ground to try and save Victorian clubs. Firstly, having said that, in relation to that, I haven't got much time. But to be a successful football club, any good administration must provide 3 things: money, players, and a coaching staff that can get the best out of them. But it's money and players that we are not on a level playing footing with the interstate clubs. There are only 2 states that provide sufficient players for the number of clubs they have in the AFL. That is Western Australia and South Australia. New South Wales doesn't produce enough players. Queensland doesn't produce enough players. Victoria does not produce enough players for 10 viable competitive sides. We only produce 49% of the players in the competition, and we had 69% of the teams. There was a 20% shortfall. Sure, what Ron Cook said was good, but that was a false level back in the 80s. We got every player out of Victoria, and we could go interstate and get the Germans, get the Buccaneers, but we cannot do that now. Understand these facts, what we're talking about. Why did the Ben Allens, why did the Germans, why did the Robrams, why did Gals leave the state? If we had those players here, we would be a viable, competitive side. Dunstall was offered $2 million to go home for 10 years, whether he played or not. How much do you think it cost Collingwood to keep Buckley? How much do you think it cost St Kilda to keep Lowe? This is the thing. There is a critical link to understand and to appreciate the debate. There is a crucial link between players and money. I can assure you this, if Hawthorn didn't have a good zone after 68, you wouldn't have enjoyed the success that went through it. That is a fact. Ladies and gentlemen, when free agency comes in, and I was associated when I was coaching at that particular time, back in 1972, when the 10-year rule came in, that was a form of free agency. Players left clubs then, they had to take it out. Just leave me with these things. 3 years ago, when it was revealed, 3 years ago when the debt was revealed, people, the president stood down, Raymond Bider, Frank Buckle, Graham Knott, you people elected them to do a job for you. They've been in power for 3 years. They are telling you the situation. You people want to shoot the messenger. Since 1992, you've had 3 presidents, 4 new blokes on the committee. You changed your chief executive, 4 new members on the board. You've had 3 coaches. You sacked your recruiting officers. It's like changing the chairs on the Titanic. We're in quicksand. We are trying to do and tell you the best option for this club here.
Three-time premiership coach Allan on the stage at the Camberwell Civic Centre. I don't know whether live television sport or television anything comes any more dramatic than that. At the Dallas Brooks Hall, the Melbourne meeting is still stalled. Apparently the Melbourne board wanted to call the meeting off, but the Demon Alternative wants to proceed with the meeting. We're going back though to the Hawthorn meeting. Don Scott about to speak against the merger.
When we started 4 or 5 weeks ago, we had an aim, and that was to raise money. Tonight, we have $900,000 in the bank. We have $20,000 in pledges. I said at the rally that I want you to vote rationally, not emotionally, because this is also a rational decision you've got to make. I also said that we would advise you. I'm now telling you that the club is viable. The other thing I can't tell you, and I'd like to talk to the pro-merger group, when we talk tonight, and we're in-house here, it is them against us. But when we walk out of this room, it is we. Do you understand? We.
This has been a hard-fought campaign. It's been very, very hard. There's been a lot of dirty tricks along the way, and we've done it our share too, so don't worry about us. But one thing is that's coming through is the guilt factor. And we have had people now coming forward and just telling us what is actually happening as far as what we call the opposition. I know the jumper is a problem with you people because the telemarketing that Hawthorn has done has suggested that. The other problem is they have loss of Hawthorn name. The third one, and I don't want you to jeer or cheer or whatever, now be quiet please, is the new board of the merged club is flawed by including present Hawthorn board members. They're the three, now just hang on please, they're the three things that have come through, okay? Now, in this thing that we've conducted, I haven't had much compassion for this mob here. Just let me finish. But I really did, and it really got up my goat to read the paper last Thursday, the same thing that inspired me to get off my arse when I knew that we're going to merge, when Brian Coleman went to bloody Ian Ridley and asked about the name. Can you just be quiet? We've only got 5 minutes. I rang Coley up. I said, Coley, you go to bloody Ian Ridley and you tell him to call it the Hawthorn Demons. Because we've got the assets, we've got everything. And we've now got the money and we've got a plan to go forward. Go and put it to him, the arrogant little bastard. And we're talking here as we, not them against us. It is we. You read in the paper, Ian Ridley, a couple of them wanted to change the name, but it just isn't possible. That's not a true merge. And he also went on to say, that is how it is. That is how it is. Nobody is told that is how it is. It's a split fair and square. We've got Melbourne, you've got Hawks. Where's Hawthorn's name? You're probably not privy to what went out from Melbourne. Let me just read you a couple of little things. I'm talking to the pro-mergers here. Here it is. History says that we may be the Melbourne Fuchsias, the Melbourne Redlegs, the Melbourne Demons, maybe the Melbourne Hawks. So we're entering into a new phase of history. They don't care what they call themselves as long as it's Melbourne. The new entity will be Glenferrie Oval at no cost to the MFC, Melbourne Football Club, as it has the ground exclusively. No begging the cricket people about training times. The ground will be ours. And with the tremendous player facilities, this is the assets that we've got, including a spa, gymnasium, recently refurbished administration offices, ample car park, plus social club, plus gaming venue. The club will be the envy of the AFL. People, I know that this Guernsey, there's ours. I mean, this is not the greatest fashion statement around, brown and gold. But whether you like it or not, they're our colours. Hang on. I'm talking to the pro-mergers here because we're talking as we, okay? Not talking about I against us. There's Melbourne. It used to be pale blue. They changed it to navy blue. Just have a look at Hawthorn. Now, this is after a couple of abridged versions. This is what they finally came up with. You take off, where's the brown? You take off a little bit of gold. What have you got? A Velcro Hawk and a Melbourne Guernsey.
Well, Don Scott in scintillating form at the Camberwell Civic Centre. He has always had a flair for the theatrical, Lee. I remember him pouring the water over his head after he kicked that goal at the Jollymont end in the 78 grand final. I don't know whether he was ever better than that, though.
No, I gave Allan Jones a 9 and I think Scotty a 9.5. That was just fantastic. That little Velcro props was just magnificent.
He might have just stitched up the special comments role in the grand final telecast. So, That was a fine performance.
He certainly had them eating out of his hands, didn't he? But the point is, we've heard all that. But tonight, that was all words. It's really nothing to do with the issue. I mean, the issue is purely a financial one. Can they or can't they? I'm uncertain of it. As I say, I accepted what the board told me. And it may be that if this doesn't get through, well, a new Hawthorn board will have the chance to see if they can do anything.
Nonetheless, I mean, we questioned earlier whether there was any point in this going ahead, and they're chanting for Don Scott at the moment. But, I mean, the coming together of a large group of people is a very powerful statement, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, look, I mean, Footscray, you know, I keep going back to Footscray 89, but, I mean, everyone said when Peter Gordon first emerged there, how are they going to get the wherewithal and the resources or whatever? Well, they did. They got a good board together. They had a great first up season. They were in the finals 2 years later.
And eventually, Peter Gordon is exploring mergers.
That is true, but it's another 7 years down the track, and who knows what can happen in those 7 years, particularly, and we keep making this point, when the new TV contract comes in at the end of 98, there's no reason why the distributions to clubs can't go up, you know, several times over.
Well, is it possible too that the AFL, if it sees enough of this going on, enough of the pain and anger, particularly from clubs that were a bit stronger than Footscray were in 1989, that it might actually have to start rethinking its philosophy?
Gee, they've had enough examples, though, haven't they? I think the philosophy, frankly, is just too cast in stone. I honestly don't think some of the AFL commissioners comprehend this sort of thing that we're seeing tonight, and I think it shows time and time again.
If they don't comprehend it, they haven't got Optus Vision and Sports AFL. Well, you only have to look at it.
We might just have to send them a tape, Tim, because it's pretty. I don't know about everyone out there, but I found that pretty riveting viewing.
It was, yes.
And Yabby, you gave a 9.5 out of 10. Lee, you weren't playing in '89 when he gave his half-time one about the kid who bought the pair of shoes, but is that a sample of what you used to get when he was coaching?
Oh, well, I mean, that ability to raise his voice to such a high pitch, you feel like putting your fingers in your ears. He just talks so loudly, and you know, pushes your back against the wall, and he always delivers it with such conviction, which you don't see very public. That's a rare glimpse of Allan Jeans in the public arena.
Now, they're taking questions from the floor at the Camberwell Civic Centre. That's Richard Loveridge, who is chairing the whole thing, but let's hear a question.
Where they think they're going to get this large supporter base from?
Please, could I get clarification of that? Is it a question to the board?
Sorry, I'll clarify that. With the merged club, you are saying that we're going to have a supporter base of 20,000 plus.
Yes.
And I don't believe that's going to happen.
Okay.
So I'd like to know.
Brian Coleman.
I've never said 20,000. I said initially we would get 17,000. And the success that we would have in the first year, which would have been immediate, we would then expect the rest of you people to pop along the year after, or the year after.
Well, I didn't answer that.
Please keep the cheers or jeers to a minimum so as many as possible can get a say. In the middle, please.
In the last 3 weeks, I've received 8 loads of mail, and I've been telemarketed twice. Why did you never try to raise membership as diligently as you tried to denigrate our club?
All right. We looked at every avenue. I guess in hindsight,
I guess in hindsight we didn't have Don Scott or Dermot Brereton doing it, that's all. If we did, and Don Scott wanted to come on the board last year, I wish we had got Don Scott on the board. He might have helped us get the other way. Thank you.
Is there a further microphone, please?
Who said that gutless wonder? Would you stand up, please? Oh, no. Where's the security bloke?
We'll move to the... Excuse me. At the poll at the back.
Yeah, we're being polled. Okay. Brian, you stated quite often that the AFL is going to give us $6 million, an open slather on the best 44 players, yet according to the explanatory notes that you sent around, absolutely nothing is guaranteed, not even 6 cents, until sometime after we vote on the merger, and it's up to the clubs that actually knock back a lot of the conditions on the Brisbane merger. Why are we being asked to vote before you've got a written guarantee on all the terms and conditions? Or is this another John Elliott stand fiasco?
We have... The AFL have agreed, if clubs merge, that there will be $6 million. The other AFL clubs...
Is it in writing, Brian?
It is in writing. The other AFL clubs have endorsed it.
Where is the document? Why was it in...
And we would have a list of 44 players which we can pick from. We would have to keep that 44 naturally within the salary cap, but we would also be able to trade from it, which put us in a similar situation to the West Coast Eagles, where we could trade off the top and get something from the bottom.
If it's in writing, why was it excluded specifically in the explanatory notes?
Well, we'll leave the Camberwell Civic Centre there. We're going to wrap the program up shortly. We've heard all the speakers at the Hawthorn meeting. It's going to be quite a bit later, I would think, before we actually have an outcome. And who knows, with Melbourne at the Dallas Brooks Hall, that meeting has been stalled. It was due to start at 8 o'clock, and it's an hour and a half of getting nowhere as far as Melbourne is concerned. Rohan?
Just on that last point, why are we talking about playing lists and whatever for the next couple of years? I thought mergers are supposed to be about the long term, about supporter bases, membership. They seem to me to be intent mainly on getting a decent player list for the next 2 years. That's not what it's about, surely.
It's a very short-term objective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that last question was about this specific merger. I mean, the first question is, do we have to merge? And the second question, unfortunately, they're all tied up at once, aren't they? You should almost get a mandate to go to merge, because that's what we've got to do, and then we investigate a specific merger. But they're all intertwined into the one question at the one time.
We've got to wrap it up. Lee, that'll give you a chance to get to the Camberwell Civic Centre, or do you have another engagement?
I think I might avoid that by a long way.
Have you got another engagement?
I'm talking footy tonight on the
Give us a plug, Lee. Give us a plug.
I hope it's as interesting as our program was tonight, Lee, but I think it might be battling to match what we've seen in the last hour and a half or couple of hours on Football Feedback. Preliminary finals coming up this week. Don't forget about those. Brisbane and North Melbourne in the afternoon, Essendon and Sydney at night. For now, good night.